Yesterday we were saying on the show, Gaza has poisoned our street. Now, has it poisoned the mother of all parliaments?
Well, what's happened is what's been basically a matter of intimidation by Islamism in this country over about the past 20 years has finally reached Parliament, and that's why they're taking it seriously. I mean, I think that when you look at what's happening there, and all the shenanigans, which most people will look at home and just be appalled by, the fact is it sort of rather masks what I would see as the real issue, and that is that basically MPs, Labour MPs particularly, and some Tories, are being increasingly intimidated, yes. As Chris said there, I think, not by people outside, but locally, you know, and the general atmosphere is one of intimidation. This is the real issue. The problem is really, Martin, is that the House of Commons has got a record of basically ignoring the real issue. When Sir David Amish was murdered, what happened? The Commons talked about social media, the dangers of social media. Similarly, when Mike Freer stood down because of intimidation, you know, the MP for Finchley, quite recently, I think this speaker said something like, you know, we've all got to be nicer to each other. In other words, totally missing the point. I mean, whether it is a school teacher in Batley going into hiding, he's still in hiding for showing his pupils cartoons of Mohammed, right up to this very week where William Shawcross, who wrote the report about Prevent, you know, the anti-terrorist strategy, said that in fact fear of being considered Islamophobic meant that actually it wasn't being effective. This is going through our whole society, as is indeed a form of sectarianism. That is the most worrying thing of all, and it's related to this.
And I think you bang on. And I think people are afraid to call this out. And we also saw this with the grooming gang scandals. And you're right, we're covering the Shawcross report later on in the show. Islamic extremism being allowed to fester and to flourish because we're afraid to call it out. And I was in that crowd yesterday at Parliament. Coming to that a bit later, I was assaulted in that crowd. They were putting up placards early doors of your grandchildren will know how you voted today. And I said to Chris Hope yesterday at that point, they're going to be terrified in there of how they vote. It's a matter of public record, and they've got to go and do their surgeries, be in their constituencies. It's not just the Tory MPs. We've seen Rachel Reeves harassed on the streets, Sir Keir Starmer chased off a train, Angela Rayner harassed on the campaign trail. If you don't stop the mob ends up controlling the country.
Yes, but the problem is that basically, as I said, this has been going on for a very long time. Appeasement does not work. We've just seen a massive piece of appeasement happening.
So what's the answer?
Well, I mean, basically, two things I would say, actually, to that. First of all, Martin, you've got to have, I would say, and you might think it's unrelated, but it's not, a complete halt to any further migration, because that's at the very root of all of this. That you've got to have. And they've got to basically stop appeasing and start, well, not being cowards, because people have been living with this now for a long time in all these different areas of life.
It was all about safety. He doesn't want to, you know, pick up the phone and hear that one of your colleagues has been murdered by terrorists. Are you buying that?
Well, I'm sure that was part of his reason for making the decision he did, and I acknowledge that. But in my view, unfortunately, I think he's actually made things worse, because what he's done is he's given a message out in Parliament that if you threaten your MP with abuse or the threat of violence, that actually you can influence how Parliament is run, and that's a terrible message to send out. That's not good for our democracy. That's not good for our country.
Reid says that Britain is not breeding extremism. Well, Patrick, let's start with you. Are we?
Well, we obviously are, and if Rebecca wants to call Stevie Wonder, even he would say that he can see it. It's absolutely common sense that we are breeding extremism, and you don't have to look very far to see it, do you? Why do we have bollards everywhere in busy areas? Oh, is that because the Mormons might be driving badly? Why are we looking over our shoulders at Christmas markets, as our Home Secretary wants us to do? Could that be some pesky Jehovah's Witnesses? No, obviously not. It is actually because we've got rabid Islamist extremism on the march in this country, emboldened by incredibly weak leadership and people who like to slander other people, who call it out by saying that they are just far right themselves. That is absolutely staggering. And I would just ask, how many people have to die? How many more Manchester Arena bombings do we have to have? How many borough markets do we have to have before people start calling it out for what it is? MPs last night bottled a vote because they were scared of rabid Islamist extremism. We currently have a group of people who are not even from this particular school, the Michaela Academy, who are taking that school to the High Court because they didn't want to put a prayer room in that school. That is extremism. We've had people outside Batley Grammar School, okay, terrorising a teacher who's had to go into hiding, okay, as a result of it. And we've had an autistic lad who's scuffed a copy of the Quran. His mum gets marched down to the local mosque with 2 police officers in tow to apologise to members of the local community there. And you tell me that that's not extremism?
I'm not a party, I'm a journalist. Please understand what you are doing right now. I am not a party to this. I will not be intimidated by them. And you're not stopping Australian journalists from working. I am doing it from here. There's other journalists, look at this Channel 9 there. Why are they attacking me? Because of your association. Because of my association, because I have a Jewish friend. Are you saying because I have a Jewish friend, I can't be a journalist? You're allowing them to say to you, because I have a Jewish friend, I'm allowed to have Jewish friends. They told me to come to this side and they assaulted me here. Go get him from the crowd. Obviously what? You can't do it.
Just can you let me speak?
Okay.
Please? There's a spectrum, okay?
Okay.
That's a relatively minor assault, okay?
A minor assault, okay. So that is an assault.
I'm not
okay.
saying it's not an assault, I'm
Yeah.
saying it's a minor assault. There's
Yeah.
a spectrum, okay?
Yeah.
Minor, major. Major is something like a stabbing.
Yeah.
Minor is something like that, a little push.
Yeah. That wasn't a little push back. He kicked me and grazed me on my leg.
I just had a look at the footage, I couldn't see a kick.
Okay.
I saw him like chest bump you essentially.
He kicked me, man.
I knew that if they had not done it at that moment, when a masked individual attacks a member of the public, when a masked individual attacks a journalist out in the public in Melbourne, like it's a no man's land, like they can just do whatever they like willy-nilly in front of the police, and he's masked, I told the police that's the person there, because you have to identify him, because how am I going to identify him?
How are you going to know who assaulted me? With how? He's wearing a mask. Come on, man.
The more I spoke to the police, the more I realized they were stonewalling me, and they were not interested whatsoever in identifying that individual.
So, as you can see, I was egged by a young woman who was at the protest, threw 2 eggs at me. 1 missed my head, 1 got me. Before that, I'd been showered with liquid. I hope it was water. Who knows what's going on at the moment with Abdul Azidi on the streets. This started when I left work and I saw images being projected onto Big Ben. You can see them on screen there. It said, "Stop bombing Gaza." It said, "From the river to the sea." Pro-Palestine messages being projected onto Big Ben, the Tower of Westminster. This is a criminal offence.
Member of Parliament, Andrew Percy.
Months I've been standing up here talking about the people on our streets, demanding death to Jews, demanding jihad, demanding intifadas, as the police stand by and allow that to happen. Last night, a genocidal call for "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" was projected onto this building. That message says no Jew is welcome in the state of Israel or in that land.
Just this week, 7 Egyptian migrants gang raped a 13-year-old Italian girl in front of a 17-year-old boyfriend, and they made him watch it. A day before that, a British tourist was raped by a Moroccan migrant in Milan. This is the reason why now the Europeans are waking up. These Parisians are saying no to Islamic imports. The Germans, who under Angela Merkel imported up to 4 million Muslim migrant men, they are saying, say no to Islam.
Vanessa is one of the 1,200 women across Germany who were sexually assaulted or harassed last New Year's Eve.
Kalicha and her friend are among several recent cases of women who say they've been verbally or physically abused, targeted specifically for their choice in clothes, anything deemed too revealing by their alleged attackers.
Look at these Spaniards. They're saying Spain is a Christian country, not a Muslim country. And just yesterday, look at the Japanese. Japan is known for no migration, but some Muslim migrants made their way into Japan as well, and guess what? They noticed a sharp increase in violent sexual crimes against local Japanese women. So the Japanese people are also saying no to Muslim migrants. And of course, what's happening in Ireland, I think everyone knows about this. These Irish people are also saying no to Muslim migrants. Okay, Harris, we know there's a problem with radical Islamism in Europe, but what does that have to do with Australia? Just yesterday, or by the time you watch this video, the news might be a couple of days old, the whole of Australia was shocked when it learned that these 4 men brutally stabbed a 70-year-old granny, Veline White. These guys have now been identified as Sudanese men who came here as refugees. Now, what I'm about to tell you might be inconvenient, but it's not racist, because these are hardcore facts determined by the Victorian Crime Statistics Agency. According to the Victorian Crime Statistics Agency, Sudanese people make up 0.1% of the general population. However, they make up 1% of all the crimes committed in Victoria. That means that if you're Sudanese, you are 10 times more likely to commit a crime. 10 times! In some other crimes, the figures are far worse. For example, 7% of home invasions are committed by Sudanese. That means if you're a Sudanese person, you are 70% more likely to invade a home. Wait, it gets worse than that. 14% of aggravated robberies are committed by Sudanese. That means you are 140 times more likely to commit an aggravated robbery if you are a Sudanese person. But import an Afghan man who sees nothing wrong in beating up his wife and then try to tell him that, hey,
violence against women? Australia says no.
All of a sudden, you have a problem and you don't know how to deal with this. If you import people from cultures who see women as pleasurable objects for men, yes, listen to this.
Homosexuality is a heinous, horrible thing. It's not acceptable in Islam. God created man and then he created woman for man's pleasure.
Every time these men see women who are not covered up as per their understanding, they're going to see that it's fair game to get her. This is the reason why we're seeing this significant increase in violent sexual crimes against women in Europe. The point of this video is that this experiment has taken place in Europe and America. Don't let Australia go down the same route as Europe and America. I go to Europe every year, and I'm telling you, every year, Europe is worse than the year before. Not just because of violent crimes, but because of everything. Everything is collapsing. Social services, healthcare, infrastructure, transportation, everything is falling apart.
Open Doors US has just released its annual World Watch List, and the global persecution trend is alarming. Although fewer Christians died for their faith in 2023, violent attacks against Christians and their churches are rising dramatically, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. Well, Ryan Brown is CEO of Open Doors US. He joins us to explain. Ryan, what's happening to Christians in sub-Saharan Africa, and why are the attacks worsening?
Great question. Yes, I think one of the primary reasons is that so many of these countries are already considered fragile states, where governments do not necessarily have full control of what is going on in these countries. And therefore, in these countries, Christians can become easy targets. For those that are looking to create instability within those environments, Christians can often be targets that they can go against, that they can do so with impunity. They've received no consequence for those actions because, again, Christians are not often protected or recognized by the governments in those areas.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends. Over 140 Christians were killed in Nigeria by jihadists over the Christmas holiday, marking another deadly weekend in West Africa as Christians are practically being hunted for sport. A Christian is killed every 2 hours in Nigeria. It's astounding. Why don't you just tell us what is going on? Why are Christians being hunted down and killed and kidnapped and their churches burned in Nigeria specifically?
Well, first of all, it depends on who you ask. If you ask the Christian community in Nigeria, and this is the largest country in Africa, the biggest economy in Africa, a democracy nonetheless, that's basically 50% Christian, 50% Muslim, and every single Christian in the country will tell you they're being targeted because they're Christians.
Right.